Hello YouTube, this is William Shatner with what's probably going to be my final update as far as my Sp1, which I converted to fire magazines from the die assault matrix to die. So again, Sp1 firing magazine only, doesn't do the fancy switcheroo like the die, but that's it. I'm making this video because there have been enough folks who have asked for a how-to video. They've liked the mod, they wanted to do it themselves. Even had a couple people offer to pay me either for this gun or to do a project similar to them. I decided to do a kind of a how-to instead because, to be perfectly honest, you do not want to pay money for something that I have made. I'm really not that good of a craftsman, which brings me to one of the reasons why I haven't initially made a how-to video, and that is because once I really get into this, you're going to see just how not a craftsman I am, and I was hoping to just kind of leave everybody to assume that this job was done perfectly when, of course, it was not. So anyway, as part of this how-to, you'll see where I messed up. I'll try to share a little bit of the things that I would have done differently if I had to do it again, or you might want to consider doing differently if you really do want to do this project. So I will share that. I'll apologize in advance because my video editing capabilities are exceptionally limited. I like to have a whole lot of cutaways to close-up pictures and all that kind of stuff, but I frankly have no video editing ability at my disposal, so it's kind of what you see, what you get. So that's pretty much the deal on it. A caveat: if you want to do this project, you completely can do this. I am not good at making things, but with some perseverance, a little bit of planning, a Dremel, a drill, a soldering iron, and just a whole lot of trial and error, I was able to do it. And this gun works. It works great, and I'm sure that if you tried it, put the effort in, you could come up with something probably better than mine. And I'd in fact love to see somebody do a really knockout job of this. So I'm going to share a little bit about what you need to do this. This isn't going to be, unfortunately, a detailed, this is exactly how you do everything. It's going to be much more of a, these are the things you need to do, and hopefully with a little bit of experimenting you can figure it out on your own exactly how to get there. So the materials that you'll need to do this is, of course, an Sp1. This is not a black heart one, this is just a normal Sp1. It wouldn't really matter either way if you had a black heart or not. If you did have a black heart, you'd have to keep in mind you have eye holes, and so you would definitely need to spin your breech the way that I did if you had a black heart board. I would personally recommend a non-black heart Sp1 if you're going to do this, but it would work either way. You just have to be careful of those eye holes because you wouldn't want to wreck that. Alright, so you need an Sp1. You are going to need an ASA if you're going to do the tank in the stock, which is not necessary, but I really like it. This is an old ASA. I'm going to zoom in. You can see that this isn't finished really here at all. It's pretty crappy. But that's just an old ASA from an automag that I chopped the kind of the duck bill off, made it as short as I could. Then I took a hollow on the inside screw. You can buy them from Granger, or an Airsmith would probably have it. It's a screw about 3/4 of an inch long that just goes from the side of the ASA directly into the bottom of the regulator. This right here is the regulator. Normally it would be right here on an Sp1 or a Vibe for that matter, but of course it can't be because that's where the magazines are at. So you will screw the ASA directly into the bottom piece of that regulator. Now you could do that by taking this regulator bit off, but I actually screwed it on while it was still on there. My son's coming in here on a motorbike. Alright, alright, I'm back. So anyway, you screw that ASA directly into the bottom of the regulator. When you take the regulator off, you'll of course, to do this, have to take the gun completely apart. There's the housing, kind of the grip housing that normally goes over the regulator. It's held by one screw, as I recall. Just take that out, and once this is unscrewed from here, you should be able to slide it completely out. That's no problem. So you have the ASA screwed into this business right here. Next thing you would do is, I don't know if you can see it, but I drilled I dremeled a little hole, a slot essentially through here, which is about an inch long, but you'll kind of want to play with that as you go. I would, cut a little bit in. If it doesn't quite line up right, go a little bit deeper until you get it about right. But you need to put a slot in there so that you can slide this piece in there. Obviously the screw is actually coming out of the gun right there directly in the regulator, which is about 3/4 of an inch in. So you cut that slot. Once you've cut that slot, what you can do is you can take JB Weld, and this is going to be JB Weld putty. Overall, you'll need about 4 of these little tubes. You can get them at Walmart for about $4.50, $5. So you get 4 of those tubes, but you smush it together, you kind of work it through your fingers for a couple minutes till it's all kind of a light gray color, and then you just put enough around the Auto Mag or whatever ASA that you have, and you kind of wet the inside of the Sp1 tube just so it slides nice, and you just slide it on in there and wait a couple seconds for it to set just a bit. Then you pull it out, make sure it's all fine. Then I completely let it dry. And then after it's totally dried, which takes about an hour, push it back in again, make sure it's good and tight. It wasn't tight the first time I did it. I had to add just a little bit more putty on there, a real thin layer, do it again, and then it was nice and tight that time. So then you have basically the ASA connected to this regulator, and you should be able to slide it in and out in the back. What I also did to hold that in place is there's normally a screw, there is a screw on the bottom of the Sp1 trigger frame, and I actually lined up the trigger frame where I wanted it, and then you drill in just a little bit into that JB Weld, which is around the ASA. So you drill into here. You don't want to actually drill into the ASA itself, just the JB Weld around there. It shouldn't be too much trouble. Then what I did is I took an insert, and you'll notice there's an insert right here. There's also normally an insert on the back of the grip, and you can actually maybe dig one of those out. There's also one right here where this connects. You can dig that out and actually drill just wide enough on the ASA, on that hole that you've drilled on the ASA, and push that insert in there so it's nice and tight. That way when you screw this in, it won't strip out. Eventually that JB Weld will strip out. In fact, it'll strip out pretty quickly if you try just screwing, just tapping a hole on that JB Weld. So smush that insert in there, then you can screw that in, and that is held in really nice right there, really by that one screw. If you have a good tight fit on the ASA, that one screw holding it in, it should be fine. So you got that. Once you have done that, you can actually line up where your power tube is going, or the breech, I shouldn't say power tube, where your breech is going to be. I spin it completely around. It is possible to drill out the bottom of the breech, so the ball hole would be at the top, and you just drill a new hole at the bottom. You could do that. You'd have to fill the top with JB Weld putty and do a really good job of getting that perfect and smooth. You could do that. I stated in the previous video. The reason I didn't do that is because where there's 2 places where your board connects to your breech, 2 gas, 2 air hoses, a rear one and a front one, and if you drill a hole out the bottom, you are going to be extremely close to that front air tube. It could be done. I'd be interested to see somebody try it, but I elected to just spin it around just so I wouldn't have to worry about messing up my breech by cutting into that air hole. Not to say you couldn't do it the other way, but I didn't do it that way. So anyway, and that's why I didn't do it that way. So what I did is I spun my breech 180 degrees. The board is up here. It's under this housing. Part of why this is going to be a lousy how-to is I can't really take all this apart. I should have been taking pictures along the way. I didn't bother to do that. But the board is under here, so your actual hole, and this is the stock hole down here, which the only real thing that I've done to it is I've made it into a D shape, which you go back to make that D shape, not forward, but you flatten out the back of it so that it can take first strike rounds. So that is the standard hole, and again you can see where that air hose is in. I guess you can't see, but I can see where that air hose is in there. And man, you don't have much room to play with if you're drilling a new hole out the bottom. But anyway, that's the deal. Once this regulator is in the back, you can push this breech as far back as it'll go, and that's kind of your starting point. If I could make this breech go all the way back, I would, but because the ASA is there, you can't. But you want to get it as far as you can. Once you have done that, that breech is in place, based on where those two holes are that you need to screw the board into, that'll determine how much of this top rail you have to take out. The board is almost exactly as wide as the rail, so you just cut that whole rail out. Start, you're going to cut off the feed neck and work your way both ways from that hole. Just kind of work your way over until you kind of find where that needs to be, where that board needs to sit in there. It's a lot of trial and error. You're doing a completely custom product or project. The only way to do it is trial and error. So start with that hole where your feed neck would be and just work to the right and to the left until you can fit your board in there comfortably. You don't want to be cranking your board in when it's kind of hung up on something, because it'll break, but make sure it can fit in there comfortably. On mine, I don't know if you can see it, but the board comes just before this to about there, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 from the end of this rail. 8 little knobs to the end of that rail to just in front of this, which is nice. I found that the body on the Sp1, the polymer plastic body, is extremely durable. Don't be afraid to cut in on this thing and think that you're not going to have any rigidity left in it, because it is actually extremely strong. And so even though you're cutting close to this, you'll still have a notch where it's connected to the main board. That was a concern at first, but the board doesn't need to go that far forward, at least not with the design that I have here. So you'll need to cut that rail and fit that board in there. You may have figured out that if the board is up on top, that means your little trigger is up on top as well, which isn't going to help you if you're trying to get people out. And so what you're going to need to do is you'll have to go to Radio Shack and get a little micro switch. They have two different sizes there, I've found. A bigger one and a smaller one. Get the smaller one. It's a little switch. It looks just like the switch on your board. Alright, I just had another invasion of my son. So anyway, you'll have to go to Radio Shack and you'll have to get a micro switch, which is $3 at Radio Shack. And they got a bigger switch and a smaller switch. They'll look just like the little trigger switch, which is on your board. It'll be easy to identify. It's in the soldering section. So you'll get one of those. It has 3 little points to connect, and the micro switch on your board has 3 little points to connect. It's got a front, middle, and back. It's not real complicated, honestly, how to do it. But eventually what you'll need to do is you'll need to solder 3 individual wires that go from the 3 output points on the micro switch on the bottom of it to what I did is I left the micro switch on here and I just soldered to the bottom. It's also possible to squeeze that micro switch from the top with like a pliers and crack it and just take it out. The soldering connections will remain. I didn't do that because I was afraid of breaking things, and so I just soldered on the little knobs on the bottom of the board, which works perfectly fine as well. What I did to wire that micro switch is I actually took the wires out of the side and they actually come underneath the regulator and go back in through there. It's lame. I could have done it better than that, but I wasn't thinking. What I initially was going to do is just run them up through the bottom and through the empty space in between the ASA and the breech, through the hole, and then come out the back and just come into there and maybe cover up that one little spot, maybe with some JB Weld or some kind of a tube or something. I was going to do that, but the reason I didn't is because I figured I can pull out this ASA, take out that screw, and take out the clip ring which holds the bottom of the regulator in place. Once you can do that, you can pull this back part out so you can still do maintenance on the bolt, because you need to do maintenance on the bolt. And so when I realized that, I'm like, oh shoot, I can't run my wires through here like I would like to. I'm going to have to run them along the side. But I was dumb, because if I would have done it differently, I would have still run the wires through there, and instead of pulling out the ASA to do maintenance, I would have just made it so this cover is removable, and you take out the 2 screws on the board, and then boom, just pull the whole breech forward. That would have been way simpler. much simpler, and that way you don't have to run your wires on the outside, but I didn't think of doing that until it was too late, unfortunately. So what I would recommend doing is making sure that you don't use too much JB Weld at any point to actually JB Weld your breech, and it's not too tough to avoid doing that. But then what you'll have to do is run wires. I would run them through your grip frame, through the empty space between the breech and the ASA, come up through here, and then just through the back of your housing. That way you can maybe put a little cap piece on there. Should probably be incorporated in your housing so that you can't see the wires, but I would do it that way. Then you'd want to make sure that this cap piece is screwed on, not JB welded on, so you can easily take that off, take off those two screws. Then when you need to do any kind of a maintenance to the breech at all, you can take the whole breech out, and whether that's bolt maintenance or whatever it may be. So that's what I would do. Once you have the soldered connection to that micro switch, you'll just have to find a place in here underneath that grip frame where you can kind of attach it on there so that it actually clicks. Just play around with that. JB weld, you can kind of stick stuff in place and move it around. I JB welded it on. I didn't screw it on because I don't know how to make a bracket for that. So that's the deal. That's the board holder, the air through the frame. As far as the regulator here goes, it's connected to that ASA, and then this is the top. As you can see, I have a hose kind of just going whoop, like that. That's the original hose. You can get fittings that actually go 90 degrees, and if I was more patient, I would have waited for that to get some kind of a fitting that goes 90 degrees, so this wire wouldn't do that. It would kind of go forward and then kind of loop and come back. It'd be out of the way a little bit more. It'd just be a little bit tighter than the way it is now. But that's basically the deal with it. I don't see any reason why not to JB weld the front part of this. I also JB welded the back, which was dumb, because if I wouldn't have, you could have just spun that and pulled that whole thing out really easily, but I didn't, so now I have to take the back out. But I would JB weld this front bit, but if you can avoid it, don't get any JB weld on this. Let it just float so that you can spin it loose when you want to pull this whole back thing out. That way, to pull the whole back out, you need that one screw and then just screw it out. You don't actually have to take out the clip ring. Wish I'd have done that, didn't do it. So yeah, that is basically the deal. So the only place the regulator actually connects is this front piece, and then of course it's connected to the ASA in the back. As far as the Magwell goes, at some point Dye is going to make for sale the I don't know if that's proper English. They'll sell the Magwell by itself. This is a homemade job. I was hoping that Dye would sell the Magwell, as a standalone item, like replacement part on a gun. But when I contacted them in February, they said sometime in April we will. Check the website yesterday, and I didn't call anybody, but on the website it's still not available as a part for a gun. So at some point that'll be available. If it's available, go for it. Get that thing. It'll probably be like, $40 maybe, but you're going to have a nice Magwell. Then, that's designed to screw onto something. You could just tap some holes in your housing, just screw it on there. You'll have a nice mag release. Everything will fit great. Everything will be wonderful. I didn't do that. I made a Magwell out of a piece of sheet metal. This is about $5 at Home Depot. I just took a magazine and I kind of measured it, how wide it would have to be, and just kind of, added that up, and then cut it, and then folded it over in, so it had a seam on one end where it lined up real nice, and then I just kind of covered that seam in JB Weld. The seam's in the front. It makes more sense there because you have a mag release in the back. But seam in there, then I started covering with JB Weld. In a previous video, you can see that it was only half covered with JB Weld. Now it's completely covered. So I did the Magwell. It's actually extremely simple to do. I have a screw for the Magwell. It's not, as I said, too tough to do. You have to fold the sheet metal. I was interrupted again there by my son, sorry. You have to fold the sheet metal and then put in a set screw, which actually releases the mags. The magazine release on a Dye mag, if you don't have one, make sure you get them before you start the project so you can figure everything out. But the Dye magazines release with this little door right here. Just a simple push down, and you pop that out that way. So it's actually really simple to do, and where it actually holds the mag release in, or the magazine I should say in, is this little notch. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little notch right there. And on the Diasalt Matrix magazine well, there'd be a little clip which clips right there, and then you press a button and then it releases and the whole thing comes out. So to open the magazine you need a screw, which essentially is you push the magazine in, pops that up, and then another mag release would just stick right into that hole, and then you'd release it in some way and it would fall out. So that's how that works. So you'll need a screw. Like I said, I got a screw right there to push down on that little door to release the magazine. And in my particular case, I have not yet installed a mag release, just because that fit is so perfect the way it is, and I know at some point it'll probably loosen up and I'll have to put an actual mag release in there, but right now it just works so well with the friction in there that I have it that way. If I tried to make a Magwell with the perfect friction, I probably couldn't do it, but since it happened by accident, I'm pretty much just going with it at that point. I don't want to wreck anything that's already working on the gun. One thing you'll need to do, I kind of forgot about this, of course, you'll need to, I don't think you can even see this because my lighting's terrible, but I did cut that D shape for a first strike round. Definitely buy at least one first strike round when you're doing that experimenting. Don't try to cut that hole without an actual first strike round, because it just won't work. So get a first strike round and make sure it fits in there. Once you kind of have that, I'd actually, to get this magazine thing lined up, the hole's already going to be there where the breech is at the furthest back point. You should already have it kind of screwed in by now. And then I actually just kind of put my magazine, like with the little ball pusher, which is, you know, I can see the little round ball pusher there, with that down, and I made sure that it was lined up right with the hole where I want it, and then I put the magazine over top of that, held it in place, put some JB Weld around there, let it dry, and then pulled out the magazine, and the magazine is actually lined up very easily, and it's not too complicated like that. So just kind of stick your magazine down, use that as your guide, and put the magazine well over it, get it down that way. Pretty easy as far as that is concerned. The last little bit, I don't know if you can see this in there, probably not, but I did have to grind down that breech just a little bit flat. I didn't have to take off much, but just enough. The breech on the Sp1, I don't know how wide that is, but there's a little bit of width there, and the ball pusher is only so high, and I found the ball pusher to be just a little bit too low to get the balls up all the way into the breech. Since the top of this is flat, I just ground the bottom of that breech flat just a little bit, so that it works in there. That's not too tough of a job, but even before you put the breech into here and screw everything down, you might want to just hold the magazine to it, sand it down flat until when you look down the breech with a little bit of light in there, you can actually just barely see the little knob of that sticking up so that it's straight. It goes in there real nice. The balls don't get all the way into the breech. You're going to be chopping balls like crazy. That's the last thing you want, so make sure that gets in there all right. So yeah, as far as things to do, I think those are the primary things that need to be done. Obviously, you have to attach everything. Things, again, that I would have done differently, I would have run the wires up through there and made it so that this cover was removable. So all you had to do is take out those two screws that hold the board to the breech, and then make it so that the breech comes all the way out. There are holes on the top of this breech. There's one right there. If this breech wasn't already locked in there, I'd probably drill a hole here and then use a screw to hold that breech in place. If it's floating and it can easily come out, you're going to want at least one screw to hold it in place. But I would have done that. I also would have definitely not JB welded this bit right here, only this front bit. So when you're moving the back bit, all you need to do is take out this one screw and then just screw this. This floats apart from this. And so if you're screwing this, this is not going to move. It would actually work. So if this was free floating, just pull it all out the back, assuming that one screw is out. That would be better. So yeah, those are really the only mistakes I can think of making. Is I didn't make this spinnable, this removable, and I should have run the wires through there. But apart from that, that's pretty much it. I know this wasn't a full detailed how-to. If you're going to do this, you're going to have to be willing to just kind of experiment and spend a lot of time. It took me about, I don't know, probably 12 to 15 hours to actually get this done. That included a lot of tinkering and figuring things out and measuring stuff. But it's not a ridiculous project. It does take a bit of time, but it's not terrible. Yeah, but don't be afraid of messing up the SP1. It's a pretty robust gun. I would think the only way you could really mess stuff up is when you're grinding stuff out and taking things down. If you get a lot of junk on your O-rings, you're gonna wreck your O-rings, and you know, you certainly don't want to get junk flowing into your regulator or anything like that. But that's about the only way you can really screw it up. If you find that you've cut into your SP1 body a little bit too much, don't be afraid to cover it up with some JB Weld and sand it down. It's still going to be really strong. So have fun with it, experiment, mess around. I guess the one other thing I should mention that I wish I would have done differently is I actually cut the back off of my grip frame before I got all this business lined up, mostly because I just wanted to do something and I was waiting for my magazines to come in the mail. I probably shouldn't have done that. You know, this grip could be further up on here. There's no reason for this kind of a gap. Eventually I might put a mag release in there, but it doesn't need to be that much of a gap. So you don't really need to cut your grip frame and move it back. So that's a live and learn. But apart from that, hopefully this is helpful. I'm afraid it might not be exactly what some people are looking for, but I would say those are the things that basically need to be done. But with all of it, just think about it and just, you know, kind of imagine how could something be done if you have a problem, if there's something that's not quite lining up. Just think about it and say, okay, what do I do here? And then don't be afraid to add some material, sand some stuff down, do some trial and error along the way, because it definitely can be done. I've used this for a couple days now. I'm going to use it again on Saturday all day long. It works great. You got an electro-pneumatic magazine fed marker, and the only other electro-pneumatic magazine fed marker out there is the Diasalt Matrix for $1,300. Everything else out there is mechanical one way or the other, which if you're into that, that's great, but I prefer electric. So anyway, you're going to have a pretty cool gun out there as far as I'm concerned, and a gun that's plenty capable, easy to work on, reliable, quiet, air efficient, multiple firing modes, all the great things that you get with basically the SP1. It's a tank. It's good. I've beat the tar out of this thing over the years, and it's still going strong.